Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Before we get started for the video today, I'd like to first thank all of you who have subscribed for subscribing. The channel is inching closer to 5,000 subscribers, which is a huge milestone. I believe about a year ago we were only at around 1,000 subscribers, so it's a huge increase and I want to thank all of you for supporting the channel. But today we have another car to review, and that is a Mercedes Benz SL from 1986. The SL is such a historic and storied nameplate within the Mercedes Benz lineup, and I just had to jump at the opportunity to review one for you guys today. So hopefully you will enjoy seeing a new brand on the channel, my first ever Mercedes Benz product. So I'm really excited to see what exactly it's like. So without further ado, let's begin with the video. But before we take a look at this specific SL, I would like to walk you guys through a little bit of the history of the SL nameplate. The SL was actually created in the early 1950s to be predominantly a race car. However, Mercedes eventually realized that a grand touring sports car could sell well, especially in the United States, which they began to do in 1954. There are several different names that people believe SL stands for, including Superlight, but no one really knows and it's still debated today. Once this generation of SL eventually came along, it had the longest lifetime of any other Mercedes-Benz generation. This body style was actually built all the way from 1971 until 1989, nearly 20 years, which is a very long production run for any car, especially in the modern era. And because this generation of SL was built for so long, Mercedes-Benz of course sold more of them than any other generation. They sold about 237,000 of these during the lifetime of the vehicle, which is an incredible number. However, this model of Mercedes SL is especially important within this generation. This is the SL 560, which is the top dog flagship model of the SLs that Mercedes introduced in 1985 with a bigger V8 engine. And of course, with the flagship car came a flagship price with a base price of about $48,000, and the only two available options on this car would have been heated seats and power adjusting headrests. The Mercedes-Benz SL is still available today in America and in Europe. However, it's not quite as popular as it used to be. So of course, like usual, I'd like to start the review of this Mercedes-Benz SL by taking a look at the front end of the car. First of all, most prominent is the Mercedes-Benz star on the front grille. It's absolutely gigantic on this vehicle. I mean, it's actually about the size of my face, it looks like. And I haven't seen such a large logo before on such a small car. I mean, that's something I'd expect to see on a Cadillac Eldorado from the time, not a Mercedes-Benz SL. But what's also really neat is that there is a really beautiful looking Mercedes-Benz hood ornament on the front of the hood. It's colored in blue and silver. It's very reflective, extremely beautiful, and I love the way that it looks. Very classic Mercedes, and it's neat that Mercedes-Benz still does something similar today. Several other things to make note of on the front end includes this huge chrome bumper on the front end of the car. The United States required that cars have, I believe, a 3-mile-per-hour bumper rather than a 5-mile-per-hour for 1986. However, Mercedes, of course, added this huge bumper on the front to comply with that law. It does look a little bit ugly maybe compared to the European spec SLs, which did not have that huge bumper on the front, but it is there in case if you do end up hitting something. But also another difference between the American SL than the European ones was the headlights. As you can see, there are 4 headlights up front on this model, but on the European spec models, they actually had more of a flush headlight design. It looked very different. The European headlights were actually too bright for the American market, so they had to change the bulbs. And all these changes are just very interesting. It makes the SL look very different from the European spec model. Now moving along to the side of the Mercedes-Benz SL, we can see that this has a very sleek and flat design. I very much like the style of this particular SL for this generation. This looks very fast, very sporty, and I'm actually glad that Mercedes-Benz built it for so long. It's just a timeless design and it looks very nice. And also on the side of the SL, as you can see, there is rubber running essentially along the entire length of this car, of course, to protect your door if you hit it against something or someone else hitting your car. And also on the windshield here is a very cool sticker. It actually has the signature of Mr. Daimler himself. His company merged into Mercedes-Benz, but it's really cool to see that his signature of approval is on this car and was probably on every other Mercedes from the time as well. And then moving along back, I of course love this big door. It actually has a very nice clunk when you close it. It sounds really nice. I love the feel of of it, and it closes very easily, which is just feels like it has very good quality. It feels like a Mercedes Benz car, which I do love. And on the door, of course, is the door handle itself, as well as keyholes on both the driver and passenger side. And these keyholes can actually be used to use the central locking system on this car. When you put the key in the keyhole and turn to the right, that'll lock both the doors, the fuel filler door as well as the trunk, and then when you move it back to the left, that'll of course unlock everything once again, and it can be done from either side of the car, which is pretty useful. And then near the back of the car is our fuel door. What's really neat is on the inside there's actually a sticker there which lists out the tire pressure, so I guess if you're at a gas station and realize, oh, you know, I need to check my tires, you can just look right there to see what pressure they should be at. And it also has some German writing on the sticker as well. It's really cool. This car, of course, has German written in different places throughout the car. Really neat to see that because it just reminds you that, hey, this is a German-made vehicle and it's all the way over here in America now. It's just kind of cool to see that stuff. Now, moving along to the back end of the SL, there are a few interesting things to point out here. First of all are the taillights. They actually have a grooved design, but that actually serves a purpose. That actually helps to keep snow, dirt, or mud from actually covering the entirety of the rear lens, so you always have brake lights there showing through even if it is snowing or you have bad weather. People are always going to see it, and that is very much a German thing to make sure that something will work in any situation no matter what you're doing. And speaking of the taillights, there is a third brake light kind of mounted haphazardly on the trunk lid of this car. Well, there's a reason behind that. There was a law that went into effect in the United States in 1986 which required car companies to have a third brake light, and for this car, which was designed back in the early 70s, they didn't put that into account, so they just had to stick that third brake light wherever they could, and they decided to put it right there. And on the trunk lid we also have the Mercedes Benz badge, of course, and we also have the 560 SL. The 560 of course represents the 5.6 liter V8 engine in the front of the car. And the trunk of course can be opened back here. We do have a keyhole, and this trunk locks and unlocks with the doors. It can also be locked out in case if you have a valet come up to the car and you don't want them to get into your trunk, but you just press this button and then boom, the trunk presents itself. And inside the trunk, I am actually very impressed with the amount of room we have here. You can actually fit a couple suitcases in the back very easily, and probably then some. It's a pretty nice amount of space for the size of the SL. And on the right side of the trunk, there is a little compartment there where you can get access to your battery, and there is a full-sized spare tire underneath the trunk floorboard, which is nice to have in case if you get a flat. So being a Mercedes Benz SL means that this is also a convertible. It has a soft top within the boot underneath here. The boot looks very nice and clean with the top down, very pretty looking. And you could also get hard tops for these SLs. However, I don't have a hard top with me today, which is a good thing because I would not be able to put it on myself. It's a little bit difficult to do. You probably need at least 2 people to be able to install or take off the hard top. However, to put up the soft top, there are actually 2 handles within the interior of the car. Behind the driver's seat, a larger one and a smaller one. The larger one releases the boot on top, which of course will pop up kind of on its own. And then once you have the boot up, you can then lift up the top and try to put it up in place. It takes maybe a little bit of effort, a little bit of grunt work in lifting. I'm unfortunately not very good at it, so it takes me extra effort than maybe it does some other people. However, once it's up in place, you can then lower the boot again and then lower the rear part of the top kind of into place, and then it won't actually latch in place on its own. You've actually got to go back to the bigger lever and move it back until it locks into place, and then you have to work on the front of the top. And to put the front of the top in place, there's actually a little metal tool which you use, and that tool actually fits into these little holes in the top itself. And when you push the top down and put that tool into the hole, you can actually twist it, and then the top will put itself in place. And you got to do that on both sides. And the Mercedes SL actually came with 2 of those tools, so if you're really good at putting up this top, you can actually do both of them at the same time to engage and release the top. However, I am definitely not good enough to be able to do that, so I had to use only one tool. To remove the top, all you got to do is do those steps, but in opposite order. You undo the front of the top, then you go back to the back of the top, and then release the rear of it with that larger handle again. You may actually have to use the smaller handle, push it down to actually release it. It doesn't always come undone. And then once you do that, the boot will come up, and then you can kind of fold the top back into place. And occasionally the top actually needs to be kind of pushed down on both sides to actually fit into the boot again. But once you do that, you can then lower the boot and then lock it into place with the larger lever, and then you're all set to go again. Kind of a complicated process for a manual top. Unfortunately, the SLs did not come with power tops at the time. Mercedes-Benz at this point was basically just worried about longevity and they wanted things to last, and they figured if they put a power top in this, it wouldn't last as long as just a manual one. And if you can do it yourself, why not just do it yourself? That's kind of a theme with the Mercedes-Benz SL and with Mercedes as a brand, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But that is how the top works on the Mercedes-Benz SL. Next, let's take a look underneath the hood of the SL and see what makes the 560 so special. So, what's really cool is you actually get to reach into the Mercedes-Benz badge to feel for the latch. You pull it, and then the hood comes up extremely easily, which I am quite happy about. But of course, under here we have the 5.6 liter V8 engine from Mercedes. It produces about 237 horsepower and 287 pound-feet of torque. Definitely not bad numbers for the time. However, the European spec SL actually received more. It received about 272 horsepower. However, the American spec SL was detuned because of emissions regulations. And Mercedes-Benz actually did some extra things to make sure that this engine would run well. First of all, it held a lot of oil, about 8.5 quarts, which is very good, and it also had 2 fans up here to keep the engine running cool. The regular one up here, which ran with the engine, but then there is an electrically powered fan in the front, and this would actually run even when the car was off, so it could make sure that the engine would actually cool down if you were speeding down the Autobahn for a long time at 120 miles per hour, pulled off, got to work, whatever. This would actually make sure the engine would stay cool even when it's not running, which is really cool. And what's actually kind of funny is that there is a warning badge up here in the front of the engine bay. However, it's not warning you anything about the engine itself. It's actually warning you that this car is equipped with airbags and seatbelt pretensioners. I don't know why they would ever put a sticker like that on the front of the engine bay here instead of inside of the car, or why they even have to warn you about that. That's a good thing that it has airbags. Okay, let's start up the SL and see how good she sounds. Now, before we take a look at the inside of the Mercedes-Benz SL, I did want to show all of you the key that came with the car. Of course, it is in this little key holder, nice and leather, has a Mercedes badge on it. But it's just one key, plastic, and that is all you get. So you get to unlock all the doors, the trunk, and of course start the car with this key. Very simple, works well. Okay, now that we've taken a good look at the exterior of the SL, let's go ahead and take a look at the inside. So, taking a look at the interior of this Mercedes-Benz SL, I am pretty impressed. Everything here looks really nice. It's all well put together. It's all very solid. Mercedes, of course, was known for their build quality, exterior and interior. And what's really cool throughout the interior, there's actually really nice metal in different places where you'd look. For example, on the door latch is surrounded by this beautiful looking metal. There's also metal within the door frame itself on both sides of the door. It's all just beautiful, even around the top behind the driver's seat. It's just incredible looking, and I love Mercedes' use of metal. I haven't seen so much metal in American cars from this period. There is some woods. I don't think it's real, but the leather's pretty nice. The seats look really nice. They're all kind of nicely perforated. So Mercedes-Benz really put a lot of attention to detail in this interior. Looking at the door panel, it is pretty nice. It is soft to the touch. We do have, of course, a grab handle here, as well as a door lock and our door handle. And then above the door handle is a lever to manually control the driver's side mirror. All right, let's get inside of the Mercedes SL and see how comfortable it is. Okay, inside of the SL. One of the things I noticed right away is that these seats are heavily bolstered. They have these really wide and kind of long bolsters on the side to help keep you in place going around corners. Definitely gives it a sporty feel, but I will say that if you're larger around the midsection, you may have trouble fitting into these seats. However, they are very soft, they're comfortable, the leather feels nice. The headrest does move up and down, it also tilts forwards and backwards, but however, this seat is not power, neither is the passenger seat. They both have manual controls, and I'll go through some of those right now. So I have several things on the left side of the seat. First of all, there's a switch there which you can pull up, and then that's how you move the seat forward if you need to get to the back. Then below that lever is a little knob which you can turn right or left, and that is how you control the recline of the seat. Then to the left of my thigh, there is another lever there, and if you move that up and down, you can actually raise the seat in 6 different positions, or if you want to lower it, all you gotta do is push the lever down and then kind of use your weight to move the seat back down. And then finally, there's another control underneath my right leg, and if you push that down, you can actually move the seat forwards and backwards. So it's kind of nice that you can move this seat in pretty much any way you want to, but it would have been more convenient to have power seats because it's really difficult to move the seat when you're driving, especially if you're moving. You're not going to be able to easily reach all these levers to be able to adjust it exactly how you want. Now, directly in front of me is a big steering wheel. This thing is like seriously oversized for this car. It seems just as big as many Cadillac steering wheels from the 70s, which is funny that Mercedes would just add such a big steering wheel. Maybe it gave you better control over the car somehow, I'm not sure. But it does have an airbag, which is pretty nice to see, pretty advanced for the mid-80s. Then there are a couple stalks on the left side of the steering wheel. The one on the bottom is what you use to control the turn signals, headlights. You also have your wiper controls there as well. And then above that lever is the control for your cruise control. You have accelerate and decelerate functions, as well as a resume function, which is all really nice to see. And then behind the steering wheel, we have all of our analog gauges. In the gauge to the left, you have dials for our coolant temperature, our oil temperature, as well as our fuel level. We also have a little economy gauge at the bottom, which is pretty funny. When you accelerate really hard, the needle will go to the right, showing that you're using a lot of fuel. You aren't being very economical. When you're coasting, it'll go back to the left. Pretty funny to see that on this car. And then in the middle, of course, is our speedometer. We have our odometer, tripometer in there. But what's really funny about the speedometer is that it doesn't start at 0 miles per hour. It actually starts at 10. When I first drove this car down the driveway at slow speeds, I thought, hey, the speedometer's broken, it's not moving at all. Well, no, it was actually just on the 10 mile per hour mark. That is the lowest mark. And then once you go above 10 miles per hour, the needle starts to move. So it's kind of funny. Mercedes must have thought, why would you ever need to know when you're going 5 or 6 miles per hour? It doesn't really matter. You're moving slowly, you can tell. It's only the higher speeds that you have to be worried about. So it's pretty funny. And then the gauge on the right is the tachometer, and within the tachometer is the clock, which is kind of interesting. It's right in the middle, easy for the driver to see, not so easy for the passenger, but kind of a cool place for the clock. And then all the warning lights that you'd ever need to see are right beneath the gauges. Pretty easy to see when they're lit up or when you have a problem. And then throughout the top of the dashboard are all of our vents for the climate control. As you can see, they're all rounded. You can kind of adjust them in whatever direction you want to move them in, which is pretty neat. And you can also close the outside vents if you wanted to. There's a little lever down there to do so. But what's kind of confusing about them is that there's what appears to be a white arrow on them. And when I first saw these, I thought, oh, the arrow's pointing to the left or the right. I got to move the vent to the left, or the lever to the left, to actually open up the vent. But I was wrong. It's actually not an arrow. It actually shows the level of air that you want to have go through the vent. So that means if you move the lever towards the outside of the car, it'll actually turn off the vent, and the inside, where the arrow is actually bigger, that's where the air comes out the most. Then on the left side of the dashboard, beneath this vent, we have more controls for the headlights, as well as a park brake release. But there's a really neat quirk about the SL here, and that's that you can use this control to turn on the left or right side of the parking lights individually. And the reason why you'd want to do that is if you park your car on a street, maybe a small narrow street in Europe or Germany, wherever you are, you want to actually light up the left or right side of the car to show that your car is there and someone won't hit it as they drive by. It's kind of funny that the Germans decided to make it individual, where you can turn the left or right side instead of just doing all of them at once, but they probably figured, hey, you can actually use half the energy, half the lights to actually do the same thing. So kind of a funny little quirk about the Mercedes Benz SL. And then in the middle of the dashboard, we have more climate control vents, as well as a gauge. And this is actually the thermometer here. It, of course, has the temperature there, so you can easily see it to see the outside temperature. It's kind of funny that they put the thermometer there instead of the clock. I figured that the clock would be more useful to have there for both passengers to see, but hey, I guess it's more important to see the thermometer and the temperature than what time it is in a Mercedes Benz SL. Below the thermometer, we have a few more levers and switches here. One of them moves the antenna up and down, the other one does the interior lights, and the other one does the rear defroster when you have the hardtop on. And then below that is the radio. Lots of buttons, pretty easy to use. You can have a cassette tape in the bottom of the radio as well, so it's pretty convenient. Sign of the times, everyone had cassettes back in the 80s, so pretty cool to see that there. And then finally, below the radio, we have our climate controls for our climate system in this car. To the left of the climate controls is a dial. You just move it up and down to control the temperature of the air. And what's really cool is that it's actually in Celsius, not Fahrenheit. This car is made in Germany, so they decided to make it in Celsius, which is pretty cool. Then all the buttons and switches in the middle is to control the air, where it comes out of, what it does. And then you finally have your fan controls on the right. You can make it automatic, or you can do a high or low fan speed. Below the climate controls, we have our ashtray. You can open it up and it looks really nice in there. Very shiny, very metallic. Then we have our gear selector, of course, move it into place, whatever gear you want to put it in. And then in front of the gear selector are some more switches. You actually have buttons there to control both the windows on the driver's and passenger side. It's kind of cool that both passengers in the car can control each other's windows. You might end up fighting with someone if you want your window open or closed, which is kind of funny. Then you just have a button for your hazard lights there as well. But the most interesting looking button, and probably confusing one on the center console here, is a square knob right below the hazard button. And most people probably wonder, well, what the heck does that thing do? That is actually the control for your passenger side mirror. You can't reach the passenger side mirror from the driver's side, so Mercedes did decide to make it power to make it easier for the driver to adjust it. But that's the one power mirror you get. The other one, of course, is manual. Once again, Mercedes figured this is one more thing that could break. Fortunately, this one hasn't broken yet, so Mercedes, I guess, take that. I guess power mirrors are the way to go. And as far as storage goes in the SL, you do have a good amount in here. You actually have door pockets in the doors. You have a nice sized glove compartment, and beneath the armrest in the center of the seats, you have another little area for storage, which isn't closed, but it's there at least. Lift forward the front seats, and you have a big area back there to put things. No seats in the SL in the back, just a storage space, so you can fit a lot of stuff back here if you needed to. There are several things to take note of in the storage space behind the front seats. First of all, there's a little flap on the passenger side of the car that can be opened up, and that's actually where you plug in your rear defroster for your hardtop in the back. And we also have a first aid kit in the back in this little compartment. It's actually a pretty big first aid kit, but inside you'll find a bunch of different contents, bandages, gauze, stuff like that. It actually has a little list at the top which shows everything that's in there. It's actually kind of a Mercedes thing. They've always had first aid kits in their cars in case we have an emergency. However, I don't think a bandage is going to do you much good after crashing 120 miles per hour on the Autobahn, so it is kind of funny that it's there, but Mercedes Benz thought of everything and they figured you might need a bandage from time to time. Then above me, we do have our visors here. They of course have a vanity mirror as well as lights, which is convenient. And there are also lights up in the roof here as well. And then finally, we have our mirror here, which does have a little lever on the bottom to adjust the mirror if someone has high beams on behind you at nighttime. Directly above me, no roof, which is just the best way to drive on a nice day like today because you get to be outside when you're driving. And something that's kind of funny about the SL is that it doesn't really have that tough sounding of a horn. It's actually really kind of high pitched. To show you guys that, I actually have to turn on the ignition and then that's just kind of a goofy sounding horn. It doesn't sound like a Cadillac horn that I've heard before or like a deeper sounding horn. It's just very European, I suppose, which is kind of funny, but an interesting sounding horn, not something that I'm used to. All right, now that we've taken a good look at the exterior and the interior of the SL, let's go ahead and take it for a drive. We're driving the Mercedes Benz SL, my first ever Mercedes to review. So first of all, I'm really not used to driving a convertible this small. I'm just used to the big Cadillacs of the 70s, having convertibles that are huge like the Eldorado, and it really makes this thing feel like a little Miata or something. It just seems so small, like I could just practically touch the other side of the car, and I could not do that in a Cadillac, which is so funny. So I've been actually driving this car around for a couple days, and I've actually really enjoyed it. It's very fun, it's been very engaging. It's a very different car than what I'm used to. I haven't driven much of anything like this before, so it's really been an interesting experience getting to feel and see what a Mercedes from this time period was like. This car is definitely a lot more tossable many of the other cars I've driven that are classics. It's much more engaging. You feel the road. You know, it's still a nice ride. I still feel very comfortable in this SL. It's just different than what I'm used to. The soft, floaty, boaty ride. You don't really get that with this car. But something that is really different between this car and many of the other classics that I've driven is that this thing is put together really, really well. There are no squeaks or rattles. All the body panels are lined up properly. The doors shut beautifully. Generally speaking, everything is put together well in this car, which just goes to show the quality of the vehicles at this time. And actually, something that I forgot to mention about the steering wheel here is that it's actually angled a little bit to my left. And that's because Mercedes kind of figured most people would be kind of leaned up against the door a little bit with their arm, and they'd kind of have their bodies kind of slouched to the left a little bit. Who would ever even think of that? Like, if I was designing a car, I wouldn't think about like which way someone's probably going to be leaning when they're driving the vehicle. I mean, it's just crazy stuff that they thought of. And I think it's really funny that this car has an economy gauge. I really feel like it doesn't really serve that much of a purpose because, of course, if you're accelerating, your economy is going to be worse. And that kind of reminds me of many Cadillacs of the 70s that have an economy light that would shine when you accelerate too hard. It's like, really, what does that tell you? It's kind of pointless. Like, oh yeah, maybe it reminds you to be cognizant of what you're doing. It's just one of those things that cars from this era had. And these seats really are comfortable. It's really nice. I feel like I'm hugged and cocooned in the car. If I was in Europe right now going around a curvy road, I'd feel pretty confident in what I'm doing. And this car definitely does exude confidence behind the wheel. Even for a 40-year-old car, I feel like if I direct the car in a certain direction, I press the pedal in a certain manner, I know what it's going to do and it's going to be able to handle it. Mercedes-Benz just wanted to make it a driver's car, but also just a car that would have immense quality and longevity. And that's something that many American cars at the time were missing. At this time when this car was being built, Mercedes was already catching hold of the American car market, as well as many other German brands out there. You know, this is so different from any American car that I've ever driven. And why this would be so popular in America, it's the next big thing. You get to drive something that's really exciting. It's built differently than any other American car you have. And I can see why people desired Mercedes and BMW, other brands that were coming in. But this car also represents a very different Mercedes. Mercedes is very different at this time. They were truly building cars for longevity and for durability. The lack of power seats, the lack of a driver's power mirror, all that stuff was just them trying to make this car last longer. And Mercedes has very much changed since that era. They used to put lots and lots of money into developing their cars. And that kind of ended in the late 90s, early 2000s. They started to focus on technology and making the cars as techy as possible to have the newest kind of features and stuff like that. But that was different for Mercedes, and their quality, I believe, has truly suffered from that because they were in kind of a unique placement at that time. They made something that was truly nice, truly desirable, truly long-lasting, and today's Mercedes really isn't like that anymore. All right, let's see if we can do a quick 0 to 60 run. Let's see how well she'll do. 5.6 liter, come on. Woo! Oh my goodness. Woo! 50, 60. Wow. Come on. Wow, I am really impressed. That actually had plenty of up and go. You know, I'm gonna give it another quick acceleration. That was actually really exciting. Let's see, we're going about 35 right here. Let's hit the gas and see what happens. Wow. That is actually very impressive. That's a lot better than I was expecting, because I knew this engine was basically detuned for the American market, and I figured, 240 horsepower, you know, not that much, but really, it's good for this SL. All right, we've got a nice curvy road up here, so I'm excited to see what the SL can do. You know, I will say this doesn't have like a sports suspension or something kind of insane like that to really help you stay on the road, but it's not bad, because there is a good bit of body roll, which maybe you wouldn't want going around corners like this, but it's still good enough that I feel confident going around them at a pretty good rate of speed. I mean, this car really just does put a smile on my face. And a lot of the cars that I review do that because they're all special, but I don't know, this one just especially does that. It just is an especially good car to drive. With a lot of the Cadillacs I drive, they can be kind of difficult at times with, you know, their big size, their lumbering, they use up a bunch of fuel, so they aren't always the most practical. But this really seems like it is. I mean, if you want a fun, enjoyable car, this would most likely deliver that for you. I'm sure this would be fun as a daily driver throughout the summer months, and you can have plenty of fun with it on your way to and from work or something like that. I mean, it would just be really fun. So when I had the opportunity to review this car, I really just couldn't pass it up. I mean, this is a really cool Mercedes. I've always been a fan of the SLs, but I really have just loved this car more than I thought I would. It simply drives confidently, it's well put together inside and out, and it's a great example of classic Mercedes.